n8n is a workflow automation tool that lets you connect apps, run logic, and schedule tasks without writing a full application to do it. If you've ever used Zapier or Make, it's in the same family but with a lot more flexibility when you actually need it. As a developer, I ship things all the time. I'm constantly context switching, pushing new features, fixing bugs, and running experiments. But when it comes to small things like my LinkedIn posts, they just get lost in the mix and sit in my drafts forever. I write them with good intentions, think about when I should post them, and then completely forget. They just sit there while I move on to the next thing. So I did what any developer would do. I built a system that posts them for me. It lives in Google Sheets, runs on n8n, and I haven't thought about manually posting in months. You might be wondering why I would use n8n instead of Zapier or Make. To be honest, any of these could work just as well, but n8n just hits in that sweet spot. The visual editor means you can build real workflows by dragging nodes onto a canvas and connecting them together. So you don't need to be a developer to get something work. But when you do need a little custom magic like filtering a list, formatting a date, handling an edge case, you can drop in a small code node and write just 10 lines of JavaScript. You're not locked into a rigid no-code box, but you're also not building infrastructure from scratch. It's the perfect compromise between an IDE and a no-code tool, and that's the reason why it's so popular among developer communities. Even for someone who's never automated anything before, n8n is a genuinely approachable place to start. And for someone like me who codes for a living but doesn't want to spin up a server every time they want to automate a small task, it's just faster. And that's why it's our tool today. I'm going to walk through a real workflow I actually use, automated LinkedIn posting from a Google Sheet. And by the end, you'll have a template you can adapt for basically anything. The problem is not that I don't want to share anything on LinkedIn. The issue is that the manual posting requires me to context switch at the exact right moment. And I'm genuinely terrible at that. What I really needed was a queue, somewhere I could dump post ideas when I'm in the flow and then let automation handle the timing for me. This workflow does exactly that. I write posts whenever inspiration hits, the system publishes them on a schedule, and I get a complete log of everything that happened. It took me around 10 minutes to build the first time. Let's rebuild it together now and see if we can beat that time. We're going to build this entire thing from start to finish. If you want to follow along, feel free to pause as needed. If you just want to see how it works, you can sit back and watch. Let's get started. Let's add the schedule trigger as the first step. You can search for the schedule trigger in the side panel and add this to the canvas. For now, we're going to set our interval to 15 minutes. And that's it. You can exit out. This is what kicks off the whole workflow. It runs automatically so you never have to remember to trigger it manually. I set it to 15 minutes because that means posts can go out pretty quickly after they're scheduled, but I'm not constantly hammering the API every single minute. Now that we have our schedule trigger, let's move on to the queue. I have a Google Sheet where I have a few columns already set up, and I also have a few posts scheduled. I chose Google Sheets because I can edit it from anywhere. When I think of something worth posting, I just open the sheet on my phone and add a row. The status column is really the heart of the whole thing. It tells the workflow exactly what to do with each row. The schedule time can be a full date and time or just a date if you want. The workflow just checks whether it's in the past or not. This sheet has generally become my second brain. Well, maybe my third brain if you're being honest. After my actual brain and my notes app that I check compulsively. So now that we have a sheet, let's add it to n8n. I'm going to open the sidebar and search for the Google Sheets node. We're going to choose the Get Rows in Sheet option. Once you select that, you might need to authenticate with your Google ID. That only takes about 30 seconds. Once your Google account is connected, you can choose the operation you want to perform. For now, we'll just stick with Get Rows. You can choose the document from the list or add in your URL. Now that we have our operation in order, we can add the document by simply entering the URL. If you have multiple sheets within your actual Google Sheet, you can choose it from the list as well. After that initial setup, this node just pulls every single row every time the workflow runs. We're reading everything here because we need to filter it ourselves in the next step to figure out what actually needs to be posted. Before we do that, let's connect our nodes together. This will set up our entire workflow. Next, we're going to add a code node. We'll search for the code node and select the JavaScript option. This is where we actually decide what to post. The code filters for the rows that have a status of queued and then checks if the scheduled time has already passed. We'll replace the code with our own custom logic. This is where we actually decide what to post. The code filters for the rows that have a status of queued and then checks if the scheduled time has already passed. It picks the earliest post that's ready to go. Just one post per run, nice and predictable. If nothing's ready to be posted right now, we return -1 and exit early with the if node. There's no point calling the LinkedIn API if we have nothing to publish. If you're exiting early, we want to check for that. For that, we have an if node. Our code returns a JSON row number, and we can simply check if it's greater than or equal to 0. Before we actually publish anything, we can change the status to posting. This can become our lock mechanism. For that, we're going to add another Google Sheets node. And for this time, we're going to choose the update row action. We're going to paste in the URL of a Google Sheet, and then from the drop down, choose the name of the actual sheet. By default, it will map to an ID, and we can use that from our previous node. Again, we'll access the output of a previous node and just paste it here. By default, it will pick up a lot of values to update. You can simply remove them if you don't want to deal with them right now. If the workflow happens to run again while we're in the middle of publishing, maybe because the first run got a little slow, it will skip this row entirely because the status is no longer queued. It's a simple approach, but it prevents you from accidentally posting the same thing multiple times. Now that our node is connected, you can arrange your nodes however you like. We will need to connect our true output to the input of our new node. Next, we'll need to add a LinkedIn node. This is the actual moment where everything happens. This is the publish step. You'll search for the LinkedIn node and choose the create a post action. We're then going to map our post text field from the previous node's output. Before we add in a LinkedIn node, let's quickly execute the workflow to make sure everything's in order. Great, so our workflow is currently working. We can now move ahead and add a LinkedIn node. We'll search for LinkedIn and select the create a post action. You will notice the input on the left. The text comes straight from the sheet. You can just drag the field from the if node output and drop it here. Again, with LinkedIn, you might need to create your credentials and connect them with n8n for the first time. Once that's done, we can move ahead. We need to close the loop here. We need to know if it worked or it failed. The sheet should always reflect reality. For that, we'll add another if node. We'll check if the LinkedIn node returned an output. On success, we'll record exactly what it posted and grab the LinkedIn URL so we can reference it later. On failure, we write the error message back to the sheet so you can actually debug what went wrong. To update the status of the sheet, we'll simply copy the node we created earlier. We'll create 2 copies, one for success and one for failure. For success, we just need to update our status column to post it. Choose the status column and manually type in post it. Likewise, for the failure branch, we're simply going to change the status to error. And that's the entire system. So that's the entire system. 8 nodes in total. It runs every 15 minutes, it publishes 1 post at a time and records everything that happens. The sheet is always completely up to date. I can see what's still queued, what's already posted, and what broke along the way. And I can save time for my PRs rather than worrying about whether I posted on LinkedIn. Converting these small indignities into workflows has genuinely changed how I think about my work. Instead of thinking, I really should post about this, I just think, I'll add this to the queue real quick. You can find relevant courses and the template from this video in the description below and automate whatever seems to take up too much time for no reason. Take it, adapt it, break it if you want, and make it your own. And if you do end up automating something cool with this approach, please leave a comment. I'd love to see what you've built.